Hey everyone, Rhea here. Okay, so the Blesor fight, Blesser or Blesor fight in Hard Chapter 2, specifically Hard Chapter 2-9, since there's in fact two of them. This is a stage, this is, especially the time it came out, but even now is probably a stage or the stage which attracts the most consternation and trouble for people to clear without an ECOG or within the time limit, which is understandable. It's a really stab loaded stage with very defined mechanics. However, I would say it's actually a very good stage for Uvhash. I actually, although I cleared every single stage in Chapter 2 with an Uvhash team, this was the one stage where I was like, yeah, Uvhash was actually a good choice. As opposed to the final boss of the chapter, who, while usually be considered a quote unquote easier boss, for Uvhash is more difficult, albeit doable. So I was recording a Blissor fight, a brand new one, and halfway through I realized, wouldn't it be more fun and more interesting to people if I showed one of the recordings I took? This is not the first ever time I cleared it, but it's the second ever time I cleared it, which I recorded straight after basically. I went back and did it again. Um, because I wasn't even sure it was possible the first time I attempted it. The reason I decided to pick this instead of a modern one is because Uvhash, I was weaker in terms of my account, and also because Uvhash got a few tiny buffs since then, which I'll go for in a moment. So, the exact team I had was identical to this. This is the screenshot from the first clear, except Uvhash's level I raised from 80 to 82. The reason I did that is because with how the maths of Arc 2 works, Uvhash's Screech Blood hits its max amount of strength given without, say, a wheel like Katagura wheel. It hits its max amount of strength given of 12 per Screech Blood at level 82 specifically. So before that, you're getting 11. And after that, even at level 90, you still get 12, as far as if I'm not mistaken. It would be strange if I was mistaken on that. So if you do ever replicate this, I recommend going to level 82 as well if possible, but clearly is not as needed, especially if, although Daffodil Wheel is a good choice for Uvhash, the Katagura Wheel is generally better. In the second clear, I also had inferior relics to this, as you'll see, although it was a little bit of a scuffed clear. Now, one thing that has changed for eagle-eyed viewers is Burial Grounds caught a small nerf, so you'd have to build a little more death resistance, which is not really a problem. I have a plus 12 faint wheel, so I could slap that in place on Winkle. And I should really have used the incalculable factor on ties anyways, and probably cut this but keep elevated focus, as it's very, very good for a Curse of Aliemus. If you don't have a plus 12 Death Res wheel, that's fine. You just need, the thing is, for this fight, you need one guaranteed Death Res on Uvhash due to the mechanics of the fight. It's not possible to block the second attack. So, I'll just play the video now. I decided to start from the last shop, and I was happy to see Uvhash's dimension image, which actually caught a small buff now. It actually is even better. Now, something you should always do is either take a rest site or try to stall the fight before a shop to have high HP, so you can use perception to gain more HP, to gain more black sigils. That's basically your bread and butter. So even with Winkle, the dimension image is very good. I think I was streaming this at the time. So I look at what I'm doing and then I decide to see, the thing is I can't get both. I can only get two things specifically. So I go for Supreme do I go for Supreme Glory upgrade? That's interesting. I do think about this quite a while, which is the best thing to do. And yeah, as you'd expect, I go for Uvhash's Dimension Image and upgrade the Arithmetica Needle. This wheel is this relic is fantastic, but not so much in this fight because you can't really control the Annihilate Shield. Well, specifically, try if you have this relic, try to go into the fight with a non-full Ultra turn because you'll want to use the Annihilate on the second turn of combat, not the first turn. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for me, but I did start with Overexalts. So I decide to feed ties early, which for long fights is generally the play to do, and I get Uvhash's Blood. By the way, always use Ephemeral Eternity in this chapter, unless you have a very specific kind of Awakener. It is by far the best posse due to the chapter's mechanic, since it gives you a 0-cost strike and a defend, and more temporary strength and alert, which also stacks additively with the temporary strength and alert you get from using the strikes and defends themselves, in addition to giving everyone a little bit of Aliemus, plus more Aliemus to the Zerg, quote unquote. And Uvhash is a very, very good Zerg, is another thing about them. Because essentially you can use Uvhash as a mini Aliemus battery. You can use Uvhash as a mini Aliemus battery because their Overexalt will refund everyone a good amount of Aliemus. Unfortunately, with my hand, the only issue is I can only use so many cards in my hand. I just go for a setup play, essentially. Oh, it's so nostalgic seeing the old fonts, sorry. Brain blanked out for a moment. So again, I'm just setting up. Because really the thing with the mechanics of this fight, turn 1 you should consider to be pure setup, almost regardless of character. Because on turn 2, that's when you want to drop on turn 2, you want to achieve 2 things. You have to achieve 2 things, in fact, but you can use your Ultra turn if you cannot. The first thing you need to do is you need to destroy the Metamorphs that will spawn at the end of this turn. Not every comp has to do this, but for Uvhash or any hard crit-based damage dealer, which doesn't have that much excess crit rate, at least I don't build much above 100% crit rate once I have Rouse enabled, getting hit by the Metamorph's crit reduction just permanently cripples your damage. As a result, I just basically poke them and then pass because I want to have that Overexalt ready for the next turn. So the Metamorphs come out. If you get hit by Cognition Extraction, I mean, it's super bad because that's minus 20% crit rate permanently. In addition to them cluttering you a bit as well. But the other problem is you need to defend this somehow. Now, on Uvhash, this is not too terrible because, as you're probably familiar with if you've ever seen this fight, for every shield you have, this goes down by 1. So once you get a shield of about 900, it's full blocked, as opposed to the 1800 it indicates. However, getting without a relic like Guardian Hand or this, which I misused, unfortunately, you know, getting 1,000 shield and Uvhash is still kind of difficult, a little bit difficult. But so just pausing real quick, the temporary alert is invaluable. So this chapter's resonance, when you play the Zerg's Defend, you get a large amount of temporary alert for the turn. And the more defend you play, this just keeps stacking. There's no limit on uses. You can use this to shield for large amounts, even over 1,000 with a non-defensive team, with a little bit of RNG and just the correct play as well. So I use, I get Uvhash's Rouse since I do need that, of course. I think for a moment and then use Ritual of Abundance, which honestly using on Sacred Blood was pretty ballsy of me, but I like that. um, but yes, just to reiterate, I was gonna do this, but it's like I was doing this again, but it's just relatively much easier now with the benefits of Katagura wheel, a fantastic wheel for Uvhash, which lifts them up from D tier to the lofty heights of C tier, I tell you, all the way up to C tier, in my opinion. It's okay, because in this game, I say C tier loosely, because in this game, apart from the worst awakeners in the game, which fortunately is down to a handful now, about 3 or 4, everyone is mostly fine. It just depends how much resources you have to commit to them, basically. The shabbier the character, the more support they need, as usual. I use this to... Yeah, I use this to, so you don't... Oh, I forgot to mention. Aegis is a must bring to this fight for basically any Karo damage dealer or any Karo team. The reason Aegis is a must bring is because she extends the dormancy turn of this boss from 1 to 2 turns. And so at this point, I'm just screeching blood to clear them out. The metamorphs are gone. Then I basically look and think, I use, oh yes, of course, with the chapter resonance, you're probably familiar, but again, make sure to hold on to someone else's defend. You want to hold on to the defend and then use it because that'll give you an Uvhash defend. And then once you use the Uvhash defend, you get a bunch of temporary alert again, which I also, do I duplicate it here? I would be surprised if I didn't. So I use Ties Devour with Scion. I'm just speeding up through some of my thinking because I was basically running a bit of mental math in my head. And you can see this alert, because Uvhash has quite large stats, including even a large defense stat. I realize that I'm going to be able to defend it, so I elect not to use the Ultra Turn. I do go into Riff Harmony, which is a little bit awkward. Again, I just add up in my head because the thing is, this does slightly, well, if you have other source of damage on you, it does slightly inflated damage. So keep that in mind, that if you're going to get stabbed first, the damage is, you can add the damage of the stab to the damage they're threatening again. So once the hit is shielded, correctly, it's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's an easy walk to the end of the fight, but the path is relatively doable. The only problem, though, is, if I remember correctly, I actually made quite a poor misplay here at this time, because I'm looking at my embryo gen, and I'm thinking, how the heck am I going to get Aegis's Exalt on this turn with an Embryo Devour? Because I need to petrify her to extend this dormancy. The reason extending dormancy is so powerful is because every time the boss loses a bar of health, for the rest of the turn, it gains 80% reinforce, so like a pseudo cocoon. Obviously, if 80% reinforce, you're not going to do much damage. However, how dormancy works is it causes them to take double active damage usually. But the interesting thing is, rather when it comes to the temporary reinforce, rather than doubling your damage after the temporary reinforce, which is perhaps what you might expect, it actually just cancels it out completely. So basically you do normal damage, unaffected by reinforce, also unaffected by the buff from dormancy. You can basically use this to DPS through most of its entire health bars in these 2 turns, ideally. So I just think and think and think. If I'm not, let me see. I don't think that actually is or was a way. Well, do I choose? I think I choose to go for damage instead and then go into Ultra Turn to petrify them. Oh, no crit. Megamind? Oh no, sorry, that's the old wounds, not the lack of crit. um, yeah. It is, of course, if you're able to, now, if you're able to save the Ultra 10 on turn 2, great. Just use it to mend the situation, basically. So whenever you... I was so I mean, I was and am so boosted at the game back then. You can see how I'm stressing out over this, because I just tossed that embryo into the abyss. Due to hand limit, which make sure to check your hand limit. And I'll say another thing, since a lot of people don't know this. This is a glitch with Uvhash, or I think it's a glitch, or it might be intended, but either way it's annoying. When the resonance, the arithmetical resonance of the turn, goes to 10, these are not supposed to increase your arith resonance, the card limit, in other words, for the first 10 you play of the turn. But the problem is, they rather spaghetti coded it to put it up by 1 and then down by 1 again, instead of actually just not counting against it. And the fact it puts it up by 1 and then down by 1 causes you to go into the arith starving state, and all the Screech Bloods cost 1, which is fantastic, and ends your turn on the spot. So make sure to avoid that. I have had sometimes with everything else going on, it's almost easy to forget that, and it is very, very, very painful if that ever happens. So you can see I'm doing huge damage because of the dormancy. I'll go into... Now I'm just doing back to normal damage. With 700 strength and Arc 2, you'd expect about 5k a hit. And I just beat him up a bit more. Look around at my options to conclude that Hive Will is not likely to give me anything of use. I mean, it's just going to give me more Uvhash cards. Usually, Hive Will is best used either for emergency shield or alternatively to try to get a copy of Boil Blood. When the RNG simply won't give you copies of Boil Blood. Since in this chapter you're at the mercy of RNG to a degree to give you a fresh Boil Blood after you exhaust the first. If you get Screech Blood, of course that's not bad, unless you get Screech Blood 4 or 5 turns in a row. Now, during Ultra 10, your damage is completely crippled, which is why I don't go for any damage in this turn. I just put everyone's Aliemus up. For this fight, you shouldn't need free rouses, but you can get Winkle's rouse if you wish. Just Ties and Uvhash's rouses. Well, Uvhash for damage and Ties for everything else, for all of your all of your needs, basically. So I do use these, which seems pretty superfluous, but the reasoning for... do I actually choose to go for a bit? To be honest, even with Car Ultra, it might have been worth it to go for a burst here. But ultimately, you have about 7 turns. And you have 7.5 turns in which to kill him safely. Yeah. So you can see that the damage is much reduced in Ultra turn, as well as the Arith being reduced, but it's still not terrible, you know. It still can be situationally worthwhile. Do I really mess this up? Oh no, I just messed that up, didn't I? This is why I recorded a cleaner one afterwards, but I think it's funny to look at how boosted you can be in a fight as well. I mean, it doesn't really matter because the point of this turn was simply to get the Ultra up anyway. You can tell I've already realized my mistake, looking at that 10 count on my screen. And that's the glitch in action, thanks to the boys at Brain of that. The boys and women, but it's all right. That's the kind of motto, because we've still got a long time to do the sufficient damage. So at this point, I just need to get Uvhash back to OE. This is very nostalgic. I think this is from about, it's from May or June, overall, so. I was skimming this video and I was like, should I go for the cleaner run where I only took about 15 minutes on the boss? And I was like, nah, I think a dirty run is more entertaining. Especially because I was a bit on the 15-minute run, I was a bit more upgraded. I had by that point I had at least a level 86 Uvhash. Not sure if it was level 86 or level 90. So to reiterate, use Dormancy against the boss for your advantage in terms of burst damage. This, bear in mind, this only works for direct damage comps, but most comps are direct damage, unless you're playing a poison or counter comp, God forbid, for this boss, but mostly for poison, it is going to affect all of your damage. Now, the first variant, the thing about them is you really want to kill, ideally you want to kill them on this turn. That's another benefit of Aegis's, of Aegis's stun, because the first variant will pop out, and as long as when you kill it, it gives 1 stack of Temporary Madness to Blesser. So if you kill one of them on the same turn as it uses Poison Spike Scatter, its attack, you are dead, basically. You're just completely dead. Unless you have a comp which can just block the hit straight out, which some can, of course. So it's all about killing them when they don't have that attack intention. What's the play I go for here? So I go for Strike and then into Hive Will, which is a good use of Hive Will, honestly. And then I'm probably going to use... Oh, I just go straight. I see. I prioritize Tyz's over Exalt over getting the additional Boil Blood damage, which is a fair decision, I think. So now we're getting much bigger damage scaling. Oh, this is because it doesn't actually have Reinforce on yet, of course. So I decide to clone even though I'm just getting more damage, not something too useful. Well, relatively speaking, you know, compared to Boil Blood, compared to Ancient Caress, Sacred Blood Instinct. But once again, okay, this time it's not a bug. I'm just I'm just vexed that the count is 10 and Castor gets as many as they want. How unfair. Half joking. So looking at them, this gives Temporary Madness. So this turn I'm just going to play passively. I use... and my hand is not very good anyways. I use Stone Decomposition, and this is basically when you face tank with your Death Raz. Some characters, again, can deal with this, but for an Uvhash comp, you're just going to have to face tank this, which is why you need to build to have at least a minimum of 100% Death Raz. Or if you're feeling zesty, you can go for about 80 or 90%, but I would really, really not recommend that. For your own sanity, since this boss is... I did play quite slow, but this boss does take about 15 minutes to complete, usually. Unless you have a nice speedrun comp. Oh yeah, of course this relic is basically a damage mole of its own. Go for Coition, use this to transform yet another embryo. Once again, just using Ty's ult, which, by the way, I'd say most of these characters are replaceable. Honestly, if you're willing to farm for this relic, Winkle shouldn't even be here. Debatably, a better character would be Horla, or even Clementine, or, well, you'd need Ultra for the defensive mechanic, so you kind of... The thing is, there's not really any other Aliema support in Ultra, unless you want to get fresh with Daffodil, which I don't necessarily recommend. But in any case, I just basically love tap up Blessor in advance. And then I just pass turn, take the hit, and next turn all I need to do is just finish the job with a simple combo. If you do miss doing enough damage on this turn, they don't even attack. So you have this turn and the turn after it. It's only once you... On turn 7, they attack again with another hit, which will kill you. And of course, after they trigger your death res, they halve your remaining death resistance. So even with a death resistance heavy comp, you're only going to get... Unless you have feint specifically, you're only going to get 1 death res no matter what. That's why I just recommend building for that 1 death res and using it to your advantage. So now it's just a question of emptying out space in my hand for more combo damage. I go for Uvhash's Rouse. I go for Uvhash's ult at this point. I didn't stack up Uvhash's Exalt perhaps as much as I should have in this fight. But I was a little tight on embryos because the relics were... If you get a great relic like Plague Diagnosis book, you're not going to have a problem. But as it is, as I did in my first run, but as it is, it's a bit more difficult just to consistently feed Uvhash's ult, because usually to get back to Overexalt, you're going to need to eat the Scion directly, regardless. These are all pretty useless, but I'm just looking for damage. Believe I'll use it on Boil Blood or a Screech. Either's fine. Oh yeah, gods. If you're being sweaty, you should use your strikes. So ordinarily, you use your strikes at the end of an Uvhash set of Screech Bloods. In this chapter specifically, you should use them before, because you get 74 temporary strength for a little more if you're at level 90. Which, hey, every bit of temporary strength helps. Now I'm just looking at it, weighing it up. Okay, at that point, I'm gonna Ty's Exalt. Oh, it just goes straight for it? Okay. Well, they don't quite die to the Exalt, which I think I remember being very dissatisfied about at the time, being like, no, how did that not kill, or something. But yeah, a couple Boil Bloods, and the job is finished. And yeah, that's the basic strategy for Blessor. And I keep calling it Blessor because it was translated like that for months. Oh, okay, actually, I thought I didn't... I'm sorry, I specifically clicked this and thought I didn't show my team at the end, but there you go, level 82, otherwise an identical team. To reiterate, just run more death res now. Blessor, turn 1, set up, gain Aliemus, trigger Overexalt. Turn 2, be sure to block the hit, get rid of the Metamorphs. Turn 3, use Aegis Petrify and deal burst damage. Turn 4, burst again. Well, Uvhash is a character that can burst on back-to-back turns. If you can't, then just burst on one of those turns and set up. Turn 5, do not kill the backliner first descendant if it exists. Otherwise, just take the death res and do what you want. Turn 6 and 7, burst, because you will die if they're not killed by that point. Okay, thank you for watching. I don't know what... I mostly posted this because regardless of what character you play, I see Aegis often not used by people even for cases like this. For any boss with a very specific attack pattern, like the eyeballs in Hard Chapter 9 or Hard Chapter 2's bosses, Aegis is just such an amazing character. And yeah, take care.